One of the challenges we get with all of this really cool stuff, and I've got a question from Gianfranco in a minute as well, which kind of is related to this, I think. But how do you actually make this work? I think the one thing that we mustn't forget, it's great to talk about all the cool stuff and AI and how we can have, all these sort of digitally connected experiences in and out of store and everything else. But the fundamental thing for us is that we still see retailers struggling with is there's a danger with some of that stuff that we are running before we can walk. And a lot of retailers are really having some of those challenges around getting that underlying tech right, bringing in new technology, it might be a new front end, but also blending it with a lot of, there was an interesting CIO at Kingfisher, didn't call it legacy, called it heritage technology in their systems, all the old stuff that has been there for years and is creaking, but we still need it to actually look at. Just thinking of the challenges we get for these customers is how do you make it work to be able to add on all of the sort of these new bells and whistles and make a brilliant customer experience.
Well, you have to have the basics in place. I remember when I was head of retail innovation for a big marketing company a few years ago, and someone said to me, what's the most innovative store you've been in? And I said, well, actually, the one that springs to mind was a new concept that Aldi had opened in Derby. And there wasn't a single bit of technology in there. It's just that every message was in the right place at the right time. And I say it's a bit of a sad indictment that I hold getting the basics right up as high innovation. But so many people don't get the basics right. We'll come back to our friends Lush. And I always used to refer to their stores as wonderfully analog, not because I'm against the wonderful world that you guys at Spike live in, but it was a demonstration of you get the fundamentals in place and it becomes great. And then you can add in, Lush are adding information in, they first tested their app in Tokyo because that audience was way more digitally connected. They brought it back here and you can use it in store. But, the signage is great. The staff are brilliant. The sustainable message is strong. The merchandising is interesting. The messaging is right. You get that in place. And I suppose it's the same with the website. You need it to turn on, refresh properly, be up to date. Easy navigation. These are the basics. There's probably, the top 10 things you should do in any retail channel. And so many retailers don't get those right. But then everyone's getting excited about retail media at the moment. So you're going to have poorly operating retailers spending millions sticking screens into their conflicted space to try and sell ads. And they're going to drown customers in information with the wrong information. And it's like 7 out of 10 on top of 6 out of 10 on top of 5 out of 10 gives you a dog's dinner. Whereas you could step back and get absolutely everything right in the basics and layer it up, and you're going to be way more effective.
Absolutely, and I think from our point of view, the thing we said, although we start a lot in the digital space, we do operate with a lot of stores who are, call it hybrid, omnichannel, whatever other buzzword we want to look at. But actually that whole end-to-end experience, that whole end-to-end customer journey, and not just buying from a physical or an online store, but taking it all the way through all of the pricing and promotions into fulfillment, out to warehousing, the delivery experience, making sure that all of that works and then comes around the cycle. Because we see a lot of stores trying to do cool stuff like, Lush were one example, weren't they, in the pandemic, where they started using their stores as local fulfillment centers, which is all great, but your stock control and your ecosystem of being able to update around it. Back to Darryl's example of knowing how many are in the stock room, and the system says one thing and the stock room says something else. Although we joke about that one example, if you scale that up to the size of these retailers and the number of stores and the amount of stock, and the size of warehouses, that becomes a real problem. So that getting that whole ecosystem right for us is absolutely critical, and being able to do it. And then you have got the ability to kind of sell confidently. So somebody comes into store, the product's not in stock, but you can actually convert them to an online sale. And I know one of our customers, Currys, does that really successfully, where they've got people with iPads in stores going around and actually then cross-selling and upselling when somebody comes to click and collect. But it all relies on that whole wider ecosystem being one retail ecosystem, not an online versus a physical ecosystem.
Absolutely. I agree. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So a couple of sorry, Darryl, go on.
I was just going to say to Ian's point as well that retail is incredibly competitive, and if your competitors are have done a big piece of transformation, and their website is able to do things that yours isn't. I think some of these challenges and some of these problems materialize from the fact that you're effectively rushing to keep up with the Joneses, aren't you? So a big thing is, let's get the transformation in, and you get the transformation in, and it's like, well, how do you actually support this when it's live as well? There's a whole BAU change that comes behind that. So getting the all singing, all dancing website with all the right features, all the right functionality in is one thing. But then, I heard a great analogy once with a guy from a transformation program I worked on quite a while ago, where the guy described it as it's like a dog chasing a car. It's like, we're that close to do it, but like, we've got no idea what we'll do when it goes in, and that's something that's always resonated with me in terms of the
aspiration and the chase is the fun bit.
Exactly. And then it's suddenly like, right, we've got it in, we've done it, there's a huge sigh of relief, right, the transformation's all working, everything else. It's like, but the business has now been holding off on a whole series of changes that they want to get in, because they've been waiting for the transformation. So it's not just BAU, there's fast follows, there's other ways you're either trying to chase your competitors, or if you are a market leader, you're trying to stay there, you're trying to stay ahead of them. So in order to do that, you need a way of getting, what's your path to live? How do you get all this change in? Because even if the transformation is at the highest quality and it is exceeding those expectations that you mentioned in Arian about getting all the basics working, you're only you could be 1 or 2 releases away from going to, all the way up there to down there by bringing in some poor customer experience.
100%. And I think the other side of that is you've got to remember as well that, fundamentally, a lot of people on the call, your retailers, your interest is in selling products and in growing. So yes, there's great customer experience and everything along the way. But fundamentally, if we don't get these systems live and in and supportable, then, you can't trade properly. And that fundamentally, retailers can't trade, then they won't be around. So